Hi, everyone. Welcome. That was such an exciting. I am Lisa Scottoline, an author, and most importantly for today, a huge fan of Michael Connelly. Everyone, this is Michael Connelly.
Hi.
I am excited.
Glad to be here with you, Lisa.
I love you. I am so glad to be here. I have to take 1 second to show everybody what a straight up bona fide fan. Do you see all these books? These are all your books, Mike.
Oh,
I have
wow.
signed, I have unsigned, I have, I think, every single one. And I am betting that this huge group out there has every single one. And I know why. Today, I want to tell them how great you are, talk about Desert Star. So why don't we just leap in, okay? Because their time is important and God knows. Let's get to it.
Yes, but you might want to move that. That looks dangerous. It could fall.
I know. It's very scary. That'll be funny. Desert Star, man. I love it. I just love it. I honestly love everything you write. I love Bosch. I love Ballard. And they must too. But let's tell them a little what Desert Star is about. You do it because you're better at this than me.
Well, I'll start with the title. That's the name of a flower that you can find out in the Mojave Desert, which is 50 plus miles outside of LA, and where I guess the emotional center of the story is, because it's where a family was found buried. But going back to the flower, it survives in harsh winter desert conditions, cold and heat. And just that, I was going for that metaphor of Ballard and Bosch, mostly Ballard being someone who is resilient and survives under harsh situations in the LAPD. So that was a connection to the title. And essentially it's about Ballard. I write a series, and as we both know, you try to make these series books live on their own, so you don't have to read them in order or anything like that. But the last book I did write, The Dark Hours, ended with a question about where Ballard's going to go. Is she going to stay in the department, or is she going to become a private eye with Harry Bosch? And so that's answered pretty quickly in this book. She stays in the department, and she's given an assignment to reconstitute the cold case squad. And following a realistic trend that's happening a lot in law enforcement, they say, hey, you're the detective in charge of this, but that's all we got. You got to go out and coerce, cajole, ask volunteers to join you in this effort. And those volunteers are usually retired people who have done this kind of work, still have some skills to comb through old files and murder books and see if there's things to pursue. And so she goes to Harry Bosch and to get him to volunteer, and kind of baits him with the case he left on the table when he was a detective, this family that was found buried in the desert after being abducted from their home in Los Angeles. And it's the white whale, so to speak, the case that always stuck in Bosch's craw. So Ballard's pretty smart in saying, I have the murder book sitting on an empty desk that has your name on it if you want to join. And of course he does.
Right. I know. And it's so, I think when I think about what we love about Bosch, first, I love that it's so much like you, Mike, in your writing, which is so substantive, so emotional and well-researched, and a synthesis of all of these things. And for me, it comes down to that wonderful saying of Bosch's: everybody counts or nobody counts. And in the book, he says it's more than a slogan. Will you talk about that for a minute? Because I think it's so relevant to his character and who he is.
Well, I think it really is rooted in who he is, as you say, what he grew up with and without. You know, he was orphaned at a young age. He was victimized, might be too strong of a word, but he was a ward of the state, of our institutions, the military, the youth halls, things like that. And I think it's kind of created in him this sense of fair play, because he didn't see a lot of it. You know, life was unfair to him. And so he kind of treasures the idea that life should be fair, that everybody should count or nobody should count. We should all be on an equal level. And, it's an ideal. It doesn't always occur, as we all know. He doesn't always keep his ideal himself. Everybody is a flawed character in some way, but it's what he's shooting for. And I think it is, it's a good idea. I mean, you can root it, you can say it in different ways, going all the way back to the Bible. But it's like, a do unto others type of philosophy, and it kind of carries him through.
Right. It's so great to me because it's you know, you could call it equality, you could call it justice, but there's empathy to it. And you talk about empathy in this book. But to sort of key off what you said when you started, which I thought was so cool, because we love Bosch so much, and he's kind of a lone actor sometimes. And all of a sudden, like you say, he's got to be on a team, and he's not a team player. Like you said, there's a group that's going to come together and they're going to solve, but you know, they're going to try to figure out this crime. But the truth is, he doesn't love group projects, does he? I mean, at first we see him react. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, you just said it. He's not a team player. You can add him to a team, but it doesn't make him a team player. But he wants the officialness of being able to do this. I mean, he doesn't get a badge back. He's not carrying a gun, but he's, you know, working for the LAPD again, and that makes it official. And that's why he's doing it. So he'll put up with the concept of team, but we also know when the team goes home and even he goes home, he's still working on the case, and he's still
Right.
and it falls to Ballard, who pretty much understands this pretty well, to kind of control him. And so in this book, you know, I mean, she's still a detective. She makes these moves and so forth, but we see a dimension of her as a manager of people. And I found that a real fascinating part to write about.
I loved that part because I think the characterizations are always wonderful, but a female, a really credible, believable, relatable. I love Ballard. And another thing that's so great about it is you never shy away from these hard issues. She's had struggles in the past with the misogyny in these departments. You're not going to pretend it's all wonderful. You're writing a novel about police in a time when policing is kind of fraught right now. But you're showing us his empathy, and in a way, I see them, although they're distinct people, as counterparts of one another. For example, that one part when she says, you know, that she wants to be like him a little bit. That's what a true detective is like. And I love that phrase, true detective. Do you know do you feel that, or is that something you were going for?
Yeah, I mean, you say it, being in a police department or working police is very fraught at this time, and for good reason. But that, you could say that's an obstacle, but the way characters handle that is really helps you define the character. And in this case, I think what they're doing, despite what other people are thinking, or actually even the national view of policing probably has a lower approval rating than the president. You know, I mean, it's so it shows a nobility for the people that, yeah, I'll take that, and I'm still going to do my job, and I'm going to be relentless, and you know, and I'm going to stay within the bounds, but I'm going to do my job despite what other people think out there.
Right. And that relentlessness, I think, is so great because it keys into character for me. You know, Mike, I meant it's you, but Bosch is bothered by that white whale because he cares. It's not ego. It's not anything but clearing cases. It's his caring. And when he gets on this team, so he's got to report to Ballard to a certain extent. He has rules. He's not allowed to bring documents home. It drives him crazy. And then on this team are these great characters that you have. For example, imagine Bosch in the room with the psychic. Desert Star has him in the room with Hatteras. Talk about that a minute, because I thought that was such a wonderful foil for him.
Well, I mean, this whole idea was inspired by the real situation in Los Angeles. Ballard is a one-to-one inspiration. She's based on a real detective, a homicide detective with the LAPD. And she's helped me with the Ballard books all along. She helps me with the Bosch books. And she, you know, I had just written at the end of Dark Hours, where it ends with where's Ballard go from here. And when I wrote that, I didn't know. I said, okay, I'm going to publish this book. I'm going to take some time to decide what she's going to do next. And then the real detective, her name's Mitzi Roberts, called me up and said, I just got a new job and I'm being put in charge of the shuttered cold case squad. Had been shuttered like 6 years ago to put more people in uniform and on the street. And she said the catch is I have to go out and get recruits. So, you know, the setup of this book is not coming from my creative genius. It's me copying. It's from me being an old reporter and taking what I know is a good story. And that gave me this possibility of like kind of putting together a whole team. We've been talking team here, a team of oddballs and rejects and things like that. And, you know, because they're all private citizens. Yes, they may have had experience in different fields of law enforcement or forensics, but I really had like a blank slate, and I wanted to make it a little bit offbeat in some areas. And as this phrase "citizen sleuth," which is a pair of words I'd never heard before until about 5 years ago, is a growing phenomenon online and in the world. And I love that idea. Now I can write about a citizen sleuth, and she has a secret. When she applied for the job and joined the team, she forgot to mention, oh, and by the way, I'm also an empath. She doesn't want to be called a psychic. She wants to be called an empath. And, Bosch is old school police work, and he's sitting in a pod right across from her. And it's just like a perfect incendiary device to get him to further show he doesn't work with others and is not a real team player.
Right. But it's so endearing. He says, what is this going to be, a podcast? And you can almost like hear him say it. It's just terrific. And also, I think you always give us a very realistic, there's politics, because this team has a political angle as well, which drives them a little crazy, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm trying to show how smart Ballard is, and she knew she could get Bosch on this team. All she had to waive is that unsolved case that you left behind, and he'd be in. But then she says, but there's a caveat. There's politics behind the resuscitation of the cold case. We have a city councilman who spearheaded this because 30 years ago, his sister was murdered and it was never solved, and he wants us to solve it. And so you can work your desert case, but I need you to work with me on this other case, because if we solve that, we're gold. We're going to be around for a long time, and we'll be able to solve all kinds of murders as long as we, have this space and have this support. So again, that's Ballard the manager, not so much a detective. Ballard the manager, getting things in place so she can sustain this little group of misfits.
Right. It's really something to see. And there's tons of twists and turns in this novel, as you would expect from anything Mike Connelly writes. And I'm not going to give anything away, but it's so interesting to see the interplay between Ballard and Bosch, and switching back, how they deal with each other, the conflict they have, the unity they have at times, and how much they find their philosophies kind of dovetailing. I love that relationship. It's so interesting that it's rooted in a friendship you have. That's just really true. It comes through.
Well, it's interesting that when you start out with a new character, I think Ballard's been around for about 5 years. From the outside, people are saying, well, or you're thinking, it's got to be really different from what I've already done. So she's got to be really different from Bosch. And I think in terms of lifestyle and all that, she is different. But at the end of the day, it's definitely a shared mission. And from that comes a lot of respect. And there's also some friction and so forth. They're not, I don't think they'll ever be best friends. In fact, when this opens and she knocks on Bosch's door, they hadn't seen each other in about a year. So it's pretty clear that they have a shared mission, but they're both kind of loners, and now they got to try to be team players. And one of them is actually captain of the team, which is
right. That's
we
what I
see
love.
here.
All of these fits. That's what I love. It's like all of the fits are a little uneasy. So you never know really what's going to happen. And just to sum up our part, because there's lots of questions and I want to get them, I know people want to ask them to you. What I also love about your book so much is this note of empathy you have with respect to violence. And there's a wonderful line, because Bosch is a believer, but takes to heart, to me, you're always you're writing about what is a man right now, what is a hero right now, who is fighting for justice. Partly in this novel, everybody is, but they all encounter violence. And I think Bosch really comes up with he had lost much of, and it's also poetry, in my opinion, people. He had lost much of his faith in the goodness of people. To him, the violence wasn't the departure from the norm, it was the norm. Yet, he has faith. How do you do that? Because I think that is the linchpin to this iconic character and the appeal of this novel. He is heartbroken. And that's how I feel when I read him. Fair enough? Or am I nuts?
No, I mean, that's great. I mean, and thank you for that take. I mean, I think that's what the whole series is about, is that idea that if you take on this position in society, this role that takes you into the human darkness, you see the worst side of things every day of your career or your professional life. And it's definitely not the kind of job you leave at 5 p.m. and you leave everything behind. It's, it's going to get in some, you go into darkness, darkness goes into you. That is,
Right.
that's the equation. And, I've been able to track Bosch over 30 years, and he's trying to keep that darkness from kind of metastasizing inside him into a cancer. Meantime, he's dealing with physical health issues that are also inside him. And so there's a corollary to all that. And,
Right.
it's really about, and like you said, how does he do it? I'm not really sure. I mean, it is about keeping the faith and in believing that you're going to make a change. And if he can get and figure out what happened to his family, this American ideal, these immigrants that come, start a business, and then suddenly they're gone and they're wiped out and they're buried in the desert. It's like the worst kind of crime Bosch has come across, because he never had that kind of family. So it was always something that was out there that he believed in. And then to have it dashed like that, it's a real motivating factor, despite whatever he's feeling or on the inside, and whatever his like kind of life view is at that moment. He knows, I can redeem myself if I can find out what happened here.
Right. And you feel his heart so much in that moment with his daughter too. I mean, that's redemptive as well. Do you feel that way? Or you feel the love in him that he doesn't always get a chance to really, he's not huggy feely, but you feel that devotion to his daughter. He's devoted.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you can really make an argument that that's why he still does it. Because I think he believes in this, he believes in the mission. And now his daughter is a cop, and she's following, she's going to be part of that mission, he believes. And, simple cliche, you lead by example. He hopes that what he does helps her do what she's going to do in the future after he's gone.
I love that, Mike, because I really think that leading by quiet example, the quiet is who he is. And it's why he endures. We love him. TV, film, we are there. The quietness is so profound and it's just substantive all the way down. So look at all these questions people have. And I know people want to get to ask them, so I'm going to be their mouthpiece right now. Bear with me. Here's a question from Francis Holmes. Is it difficult or fun to transition to a new main character, like from Bosch to Renee? Also, go that first. Is it difficult or fun?
You should give your take on this. I mean, to me, it's both. There's a difficultness saying I have a blank slate and I got to build a character. And there's also a great joy because you're not like corralled in by everything you've written. Every time I write about Harry Bosch, I have to remember he's been in like 20 some books before this. And everything I said is in print, it's in stone, and I can't come up with new stuff. Actually, there's a real conceit in this book that this case, the Gallagher family case found in the desert, that's never been mentioned in a prior book. And yet I build this story that it's the one he left on the table and has always haunted him. And I think some readers might say, well, why didn't he mention it in any of the other books if it's so damn haunting? But, that is a little showing of how it's difficult to keep a series going and be creative 100% of the time. Whereas if you start a new character, it's all brand new and you can go from there.
Right. I thought that was wonderful with the Gallagher family, because to me, if you really know someone over time, which is what a series is, especially one as terrific as this one, which is kind of sui generis, honestly, there's no one in this category. That's just true.
Wow.
It's true, Mike. He's so modest. He's so nice and modest, everyone. You can't even
I
imagine.
got to turn my camera off. See mine? I'm getting really red.
But what I was going to say is you're always peeling away the onion, right? You go, oh my God, yes, that one, it makes absolute sense. The Gallagher family's fine. Okay. Also, Francis said, I would love to see another Lincoln lawyer book, as everybody would, with Mickey and Bosch. Is there one coming?
Yeah, that will be that's the plan right now. I haven't started writing, but I'm about to start writing. It will
So
be Bosch and Holler in the next book.
that will be great. Meanwhile, I cannot imagine how hardworking you are between the shows and everything. And we have to talk about Avalon, the short story coming up too. Is that what's going on with that?
They just shot the pilot of that, and it's a network show, so they tested it in front of audiences, and that's all going on now. And then we'll probably get back into it in January, and it'll be out in September.
Oh my God, that's exciting. All right, let me stick to my script though. Cindy says, I am a huge fan. This is a good question. How has the pandemic affected the characters and plot lines to your stories, if it has?
Well, I try to be really realistic in the books, and so not so much in this book because I feel we're coming out of that dark period, but in the dark hours, that was the metaphor of that that title. It was the dark hours of American policing. We were in the pandemic, and I don't know what you think about this, but it's a real question. Like, I think readers were really trying to escape the pandemic. And so then you have the question as an author, do I put the pandemic in a book that they might pick up because they want to get away from the pandemic? I did the latter. I put it in, not in a big way, but my books are set in the year they come out. And so I always thought, I couldn't set a book in 2021 without having some masks and having some people talk about the pandemic. So I wanted to be lighthearted about it, but it was reflective of what's going on.
Yeah, I loved the dark hours. I thought that was beautiful. It's a hard balance, but I think you got to do it because you're realistic. All of your books I learned about LA and policing and some things about science from your book. So that makes sense to me. Here's another question from Romeo Ramos. What inspired you and kept you motivated to become and continue as a writer? If it wasn't for writing, where do you believe your craft would have come from? Or what would have come to your craft if it wasn't for writing? And that's good because I think a lot of people think about writing, and I want to encourage them, right? We love new writers.
Writers. I mean, it's the luckiest job in the world if you can get it, and it gives you joy and fulfillment, even redemption every day. You can't, if you're really into the process of writing and you write a good line, it's like such a great day. It can be a great something you feel really good about it as a chapter or a line, an internal thought of a character. So you get a lot of that every day, and that keeps you going. At least that's my case. And so I've never really felt any kind of drudgery or anything like that. I mean, it's obviously it's easier to finish a book than to start a book, but even starting a book is like, I'm often like, I can't believe I get to do this.
And let's pause for a minute to do the, do you outline question? Because I want to know. I'm curious about that.
I say not really, because I just start and I write, but I write at least 3 drafts. So maybe the first one is an outline, but I always get shorter as I go. The first draft is always the longest, and I kind of hone it down. So if that's the case, my outlines are longer than my novels. But yeah, it's just I just like to keep moving. I like to have a lot of momentum, so I don't want to like look away from what's on my screen and like look at a pad that says this happens next. I just want to kind of come up with it as I'm writing, and it gives me a lot of momentum that way. Me too. Do you have a word count that you try to meet? That's always for people trying to write. I think that's sometimes helpful, but you don't have to do it that way. No, I mean, because some days you get the groove and you have an amazing account, but a word count, and some days you don't. I just want to move the story a step forward every day, and that can be anything. That could be a character thing, it can be a case thing. But if you make a step every day, you're going to have a book within a year. Is the way I look at it.
Yeah, kind of great. Here's a question from Michelle. To what extent does writing about Harry in his sunset years impact your work? What challenges does it present when you plan a new book in the series? I think I want to pause a minute because I thought Desert Star has some of that. It's, Harry will say, I'm an old man. I love that patina to him, but how do you deal with that? What challenges does it?
Well, I mean, Harry's my man. I've written a lot of characters, but I started with Harry, and hopefully I end with him. Um, and so I'm an ex-journalist. I thought that was one of the things I got to bring to this table that maybe others wouldn't have. And so hopefully the hallmark is a realism and an accuracy. And that applies to someone like Harry Bosch. So as I've aged him in real time, I've had that question: is it realistic that he's doing this? And I think when I invented Ballard, that was a means for me to keep Harry going for many more years, because if I could team him with her, they work together. She can cover the stuff he can't do anymore as either an ex-cop or a guy who's a lot older. I said in the books he was born in 1950, so he's 72 this year. And is that realistic that he's out there trying to solve these quadruple murder in the desert? I think it makes it realistic that he's teamed with Ballard, who has a badge, who is younger, has access to forensics and all the things he doesn't have. And so that, I love the character of Ballard, but I also saw that this is a means of keeping Harry Bosch alive and on the pages that I write. And so that was like, it became part of the plan.
Right. And that's so fascinating. And what's interesting to me about Bosch too is that he always was an old soul. So beside the fact that what we think of as 72 is different than it used to be, he always approached things with that kind of, a realistic look, as you say, and also that he's ageless in a way. And I really think that he's a classic, iconic character that exists in a very specific point in time. But his view and by the way, his experience has always shown, even when he was younger, he was experienced in all kinds of things. Now he has a wealth of experience. And he'll mention in this book, this case, that case. And as you say, the Gallagher comes there, you flip the idea of his age and brought to bear his substance, his wisdom, and his experience. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you call him an old soul, and that you use the word wisdom. I kind of look at the last decade of Bosch as his quote unquote wisdom years, where he's working with someone and able to pass some stuff on, and also being able to recognize where he's weak and that other person is stronger. And it takes some wisdom to even come to that kind of conclusion. So I have to say I've really enjoyed these years with Harry, and and I've been lucky. I keep saying I'm a lucky writer. It's true that in real law enforcement, there's a whole trend towards these volunteer cold case squads. One of the detectives who has been helping me for decades with Harry Bosch and retired. He's a longtime LAPD homicide detective, became a volunteer for another county. He's 70 years old and he solved 3 murders this year. So in real life, when I see that, I know, hey, I can get Harry Bosch. I can keep Harry Bosch going for a few more years at least.
Right. I think it's so wonderful because we start to see in Desert Star with this, like the group project in the beginning, he opens up a little. And isn't that what's great about that to me is it becomes not even about Bosch. It becomes about every man aging, facing new challenges. How do you push that away and deride it? Or do you open your heart? And in a funny way, I feel that Bosch's heart is opening a little more and more. It's more than just the cliche of mellowing as you age.
I think you're right. I think it's him admiring people.
Yes.
He's not a do it my way or the highway type guy, which he was in the beginning of the books. He was very black and white. Now he's in the gray area as he turns gray. And
right.
I just think he's more connected to the world, and that has helped a lot by having a daughter, and it's helped a lot by having this professional and relationship with Ballard.
Yeah, and I also think your point about the amateur sleuthing and is so apropos, because I think a little bit we're in an era where everyone, right? There's Yelp, there's opinions on Barnes and Noble. People, I like your book, I don't like your book. That I think the democratization of crime solution is a good thing. right?
Mhm.
It opens out, as you said, it opens justice for everybody. And it becomes something that everybody can be involved with. And he seems to start to understand that. He shows empathy more towards himself too. It's really remarkable as he gets ages and deals with physical challenges that you've revealed in previous books with him. It's really something. Okay, here's one. Michael, I will do this. Will Maddie, Joanne Blatz wants to know, will Maddie continue to follow her dad's footsteps, or do you see a different path for her?
No, I think it's pretty clear in this book that she, she had different choices in prior books, but as we come into this book, she's a cop. She got jumped into a group that does some investigative work. So you're seeing the beginning of her becoming a detective. And I've been waiting a long time for this. I love doing that. I age Bosch in real time, and the books are set in the years. Maybe I should have had Maddie born earlier or something like that. But I've always wanted to write about her as a cop, but I had to wait till she could realistically be a cop and have some experiences, some world and life experiences that will make her more interesting to write about. And I'm almost there, and she's almost there, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, and I will, and people may not know you're a wonderful family man. So I think that your feeling for family really comes through in this, and I think that's just great. Here's another question from Pat Taylor. Michael, you had cameo appearances playing poker on the TV show Castle. I remember that was great with other best-selling authors. Any good stories or funny tidbits doing those scenes? I love that.
It was interesting because we were all amateur actors when it comes to that. And there's a certain level of nervousness that would, so what they would do is while they were setting up a scene, they had a separate room with a separate poker table, and we'd go in there and we'd actually play real poker with Nathan, who was Castle, and he'd come in. And so by the time we were brought out to the set and that poker table, we had been joking around. Nathan was very caustic in kidding people and stuff like that. But so we really felt comfortable with him. And, I guess the whole thing is designed to not know that there's a camera on a track circling the table and all that kind of stuff. Just stay within the table. And that was very smart of them. And it made it a lot easier to do. The one thing is we didn't write our lines, and in one of the shows I was really mean to a first-time novelist, and which is would not have been what I would have said to the guy, but I didn't write those lines.
You would never do that. No, I remember this scene in Castle when you're sitting around the table. I remember the line because I said, "Oh my God, that's such a good line." You're talking about some plot and somebody said needs a twist. And then you go, needs a twist. And James Patterson's there. I said, needs a twist. Is that right?
Something like that, but that's a good line. But so Castle invited, and this was an actor, wasn't a real book writer, to join the poker game, and he had one book under his belt, and he started, I forget what he said. He complained about something, and then I turned to him and I said, "You know what I did after I wrote my first book?" And he goes, "What?" Like he was going to get knowledge from the master. I said, "I shut up and wrote 27 more." So, which is so mean.
No. Yeah, but you're not mean. We all know you're not mean. I think if you read somebody's novel, you know their soul. So we know that. Let's talk about that for a minute, because the TV show Bosch, incredible. Titus, I mean, what is that like to watch Bosch? Titus Welliver is so sensational. I assume you go to the set, you do things. Tell people take us there. I don't know what it's like.
It's pretty amazing.
I bet.
I got very fortunate. I was surrounded. It's about who you surround yourself with, not just the people in the camera. Although, as you say, Titus is amazing. But people who, I was lucky that this happened late in my career, because there was a lot of people in Hollywood who knew the books and wanted to cherish the books on film. They wanted to safeguard them. It wasn't just me. And that's what really the key to everything. So, from writers to producers to directors. We wanted to do the books. We didn't want to use them as a springboard into something else. And that really helped. And then when you get a lead actor who's, chased paychecks for 25 years and as a character actor, just hoping to get the next job, and you give him a lead, man, he's going to do whatever you need, and he's going to be all in and more. And that's Titus Welliver. And so we really benefited from that as well. And he has that Harry Bosch thing, that thing about it, internal baggage or internal damage, trauma, that you can kind of see it in his eyes, but he's not a woe is me, I got internal trauma. He's a guy he's very stoic. And I think that portrayal of Bosch has been the key to the whole thing.
Agreed. He's terrific, and the essence of Bosch, and everybody, and Amy Aquine, who went to my high school. So I just love the show. Now let's talk for a minute about The Lincoln Lawyer. That's a TV show. Now, how are they? What is your role on each? What do you do?
It looks like I'm like really busy in Hollywood and stuff.
Really looks like you're busy, buddy.
I'm really not. I don't know anything about cameras and that kind of stuff. So where I can help is visiting the writing room, and I don't do that, 5 days a week. I kind of float in and out, listen, and every now and then offer suggestions. I read scripts, give my notes and things like that. Usually before we write any scripts, there's a period of about 6 weeks to 2 months where we're sitting, the writing room is everyone sitting around the table talking about what the concept of this season will be. And if I contribute anything, I think it's in those 2 months. And so therefore, when we start rolling and we're filming and all this kind of stuff, I don't really have to be around. I can be writing my books and things like that. And the other good thing is I'm an early riser, early writer. And writing rooms in Hollywood usually don't even get going till like 11. So I've always been able to maintain writing my novels every day and getting some significant stuff done before I even have to get in the car and go to a writing room. And then in the last couple of years, it's all been done on Zooms anyway. So I even had more time for my book writing.
Oh, so it's on a Zoom. So, because I was going to say it must be weird, because I know our job's kind of solitary. And you can't do it unless you're solitary. Then you got to go into a room with other writers.
Yeah.
And they're talking about what you're writing, you're talking about your stuff.
Yeah, it's a throwback to the camaraderie I had when I worked in newspapers. So I actually like going into the writing room. There's usually 6 to 8 writers, it's like a boardroom table. Everyone's gathered around, a lot of joking. I kind of set the way I feel about it in the beginning. And I say, look, I used to be a newspaper writer. I have a thick skin. If you think something doesn't work in a book and you want to fix it or whatever, bring it up. I'm not going to be upset or insulted or anything like that. I still have not written a perfect book. So to set the stage, it's like, use whatever you need from a book. What I'm very much about is the character. Let's keep the essence of the character, what it is in the books, because that's what connects the books to the readers, and that will transfer to the show as well. So the plotting and a lot of stuff is really window dressing on character, and that's really what, and I hate to say the word safeguard, because I really don't feel like I have to safeguard these characters, because the people in that room want to safeguard the character as well.
Right. Now that you have this different platform, does it change how you write your book? Does it revert back? Like, do you sit there go, well, gee, now I can imagine how we would discuss this in a writer's room, or how it would play out in an episode, or you don't think that way?
No, I mean, when I'm writing my books, I don't really think in that term, but there's been a reverse influence. I learned a lot from the showrunner, who's the creative boss of the show. It's called the showrunner, and the showrunner on Bosch really did a deep analysis of his name's Eric Overmeyer, deep analysis of the books. And so we sat down, just him and me, before there was a writing room or anything 10 years ago. And he said how the books would change. I mean, it's deep inner thoughts from Bosch. We can never put an inner thought in a script. It's going to be what he says and what he does. The books are almost entirely carried through Bosch, and we can't do that. We have to take some of these characters, and some of these characters you've written are pretty thin. and we have to make them fuller, and we have to follow them home, and we have to get them into trouble, and then we have to show them who they are. And so we have to branch out our storytelling. And now I'm doing that in my books. So sorry, it was a long way of saying the show's influencing my books. So like this book is alternate chapters between Ballard and Bosch. I'm spreading out the storytelling, and I've done it before this book as well. And I think that's a direct influence from the show.
That makes so much sense to me. And I think that's fascinating. And for my 2 cents for people who want to write, I think that's why that's why you go to the movies. That's why you watch TV. That's why you look at storytelling in all its forms, because you always learn. I learn from everything I watch and read and listen to. It's just, right? Don't you? I mean,
Yeah.
it's all in such a rich cultural time with so much streaming and so much storytelling on so many different platforms. It's amazing. I mean, it doesn't get better than this, honestly. Here's a question from Russell. Why isn't Bosch appearing in the Lincoln Lawyer series on Netflix? Because he wants to explore the conflicting relationship between the stepbrothers, Bosch and Haller.
Yeah, that's probably going to only be in the books because they're made by, more or less warring corporations. Netflix and Amazon are not the best pals. And so it would take some kind of act of Congress or something for me to be able to move one character and have him walk through the other series. So that I can almost say with certainty will never happen, at least in my lifetime. When these shows are over, I think there's a 5-year tail on the deal. They'll come back to me or to my estate, and maybe that would happen, but I don't think I'm going to live to see it.
I love that you made them be half brothers that way, though. What stepbrothers rather? What did that just come to you, or as you were writing the series, or you had always?
Yeah,
thought?
I mean, Haller came well after the Lincoln Lawyer. The first book came well after I was down the road with Bosch.
Right.
But I was doing this thing where there are connections between all the books. So I said, how do I connect this? I could have a case where Bosch is on the other side and you're the defense attorney. But I was looking for a more deeper connection because I just like all my books to be linked in some way. And so I went back into my early books, and there was a section in my second novel where Bosch kind of reveals his story with his father and the one time he met his father. And when he met his father, there's a little kid there. And so in other words, Bosch knew he had a half brother. And so I thought, okay, when I'm writing the Lincoln Lawyer, it could be that little kid grown up.
I actually gasped when I read that the first time. I was like, oh my God. Why is it you want the books to be connected? I can tell you why I love it, but that's a very interesting thing because not everybody does that. You could just run 2 different series. They're different guys.
Yeah, I could. I don't know why I did it. I mean, I do know why. I don't know why, if it's valid. It was because of the paintings of Hieronymus Bosch, which are these triptychs of all kinds of stuff going on, all these little stories all going on, but they're all in the same painting. And that's what I was thinking. It's all part of the same mosaic, and the same universe, whatever you want to call it. I wanted it to all be moving across the same terrain, same plane, if you will. And so that's why I was connecting them. Well,
I guess we probably should start to think about leaving it at that, because I always love the name Bosch. I love those paintings. But what's so wonderful about that world is that it's classic, but it's also, there's a lot of darkness in it, but there's also light. Can you talk about that for a moment? Because I still feel the love and family and optimism and faith, deep faith. And I thought that's part of what Bosch is. He's a true believer. And to be a true believer, you have to have faith.
Yeah, I mean, I always call him a what do you call it? A optimistic cynic.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta look for the light. I mean, that's why he has the back deck, so he can walk out there and see what's still beautiful out there. He works and lives in a city that has a lot of fantastic stuff and a lot of stuff wrong with it, and it's a balance. And I think if he you know, he can be cynical, but he's got to believe in hope, you know, and it keeps him going. It kind of keeps me going with him. You know, he has, you know, I'm glad I didn't have his life, but, you know, he's had a tough life, but, you know, he has a daughter. He feels like he has relevance in what he does, you know, and I think he comes home feeling justified.
Well, I love that too, because I feel that so much about him. And when you look at you and your writing in crime fiction is such an iconic character, and you're so important to crime fiction. I mean, you're really the master of crime fiction. You just are. And well, it's true. He's so modest. But here you're going, what that you can find inspiration in crime fiction. It sounds paradoxical, but isn't at all. I mean, to me, you always respect this genre so much, and you are always dealing with these essential truths, you know, justice, injustice, love and hate, empathy or lack of empathy. And what are those causes? And in a way, it becomes for me a bit of a parable of how to live in the modern world. You know, it's a choice that you made. Harry, we know his age. You can't fudge it. You can't make him young and shiny. You're not even trying. Yet he still continues to inspire us. I guess I just want to say thank you as a fan.
Oh, well,
I love these books. I think the world of you personally. I know all of these people just love you. And I'm honored to do this today. Desert Star, and I love that you explained the title, because when we talk about that flower in this book, I thought he is a desert star. And that to me is the source of the inspiration for all of us. To a certain extent, we are all desert stars. We are going to have hard times. We're going to have to look hard times in the face. God forbid, illness, like you say, the pandemic, violence, things happen that are awful. And personal challenges like Harry has. You don't shy away from that either. You never did. You look at everything in the eye and you illuminate the world for us, Mike. I'm honored to do this today.
wow, thanks so much. And did you see all the hearts coming up when
Well,
you?
because everybody loves you, honey bun.
No, it's for what you're saying. I
No,
really.
it's really, really true. And
I
so
hope we could do this again.
I would love to. Thank you so much for this. We should thank Barnes & Noble. I forgot to in the beginning because I was so excited when I saw Mike. So thank you, Barnes & Noble. You can get Desert Star in any Barnes & Noble. You can get it online. Get it signed. I have all my collection signed. I'm into it. So thank you so much for this. Mike, thank you so much. Best of luck on the tour. And thank you.
Thank
again.
you.
Stay
Thanks.
well, everybody. Take care.
Bye.